wonderful words of Rajiv Kumar ji, Vice Chairman Niti Aayog. This is Umakant Soni. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ARTPARK. ARTPARK stands for AI and Robotics Technology Park. I welcome all of you to this wonderful coming together of industry, academia, and government. The theme of the summit, as Rajiv Kumar ji pointed out, is about connecting the unconnected. How can we take the opportunity to Bharat? And that is where the real India still lives and lies. So without much further ado, I would like to invite Prashanth Prakash ji, partner Accel and chairman Startup Vision Group of Karnataka, to actually moderate a session on exactly this perspective. How do we connect the opportunities in Bharat? And what are the leading entrepreneurs? What are the lessons that we can learn from them? Over to you.
I'd like to invite the panelists onto the stage now. Meena Nagraj, Madam is the Managing Director for KITS. Mr. Ramana Reddy could not make it. Dr. Ramana Reddy could not make it, so she's here. Prasanna, CEO Sikshana Foundation. Vivek Raghavan, Chief Evangelist, Accel. Vidit Aatrey, CEO, founder of Meesho. Okay. So I think this is kicking off the dialogue on connecting the unconnected. We couldn't have had a better panel, I think, across between an NGO, the government, and an enabling organization like what Vivek is involved with, and startup. So we have a great flavor of every dimension of people involved in this connecting process. So I'd like to start out by maybe the panelists doing a quick 1-minute introduction of themselves, and that'll make my job easy. Maybe Vivek, why don't you start?
Start?
Yeah. You have the mic, so.
Is it on? Can you hear me? Yes. My name is Vivek Raghavan, and here today I am representing Accel Foundation, and I'm also actually going to be talking about languages, Indian languages, and their role in connectivity. So, my background prior to this, I still am also the Chief Product Manager at Aadhaar, and I've worked in many different public digital good projects.
So, Vivek, I think all of us are proud of your work at Aadhaar, and it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Prasanna.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Prasanna, CEO of Sikshana Foundation. So we've been working with developing or improving learning outcomes in government schools specifically. And one of our core programs called Prerana runs across all the 48,000 schools in Karnataka. And so while doing this, we have also come across the unconnected, like we call, in the villages, because most of our work is mainly in the rural parts. So I would like to definitely share my experiences in that. And prior to this, I was running my own small firm back in US in the technology space, and loving this for the last 19 years. I've been involved in this sector now. Thank you.
Meena, ma'am.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Meena Nagraj, Director of Electronics, IT, and Biotechnology, representing Government of Karnataka. We are the enablers to connect people like Prashanth sir to the startups across the ecosystem, or the unicorns across the ecosystem. That is predominantly the role we play. And we also play roles like being part of ARTPARK, Deep Tech, so that we can really connect the unconnected.
So Professor Meena Nagraj has been instrumental in pushing through the ARTPARK within the government of Karnataka. I'd like to thank her for that. Vidit, your introduction.
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm Vidit Aatrey, founder and CEO of Meesho. So Meesho is a horizontal e-commerce platform focused on Bharat, which is small businesses in India and the next billion consumers coming online for the first time. So far, we have enabled about 10 million micro entrepreneurs who started their business online for the first time, close to 500,000 manufacturer distributors across the country, and north of 100 million consumers. And our mission is, how can we bring 100 million small businesses in India online and make them successful?
So thank you, Vidit. Just starting off with you, Vidit. So I guess one of the pillars of Digital India has been, how do you provide and democratize these services, digital services to everybody? And of course, if it's for these rural entrepreneurs, rural sellers, smaller manufacturers, I think that's the vision that you've actually realized. And in this journey, there must have, 5 years in this journey with it. How long?
Yeah, so we started in some form in 2015, but
2015,
our current product is since 2015, so almost 5 years.
So 5 years, 6 years. What have been your learnings in terms of providing these services to these folks? And I'm sure the challenges have changed over the years as you've scaled. Maybe a little bit of reflection on the journey and what has worked and what have been some of the challenges.
Yeah, and I think it's been a very interesting journey and very impactful journey as well, as we've gone deeper and deeper into the country. One of the big problems that we faced on day one when we started this was just tech savviness, understanding of how to go online. So everyone wants to go online but don't know how to do it. And how do you kind of solve this problem at scale, not for like 1,000 people, a lakh people, but a crore people, but much, much more. I think we have tried to kind of solve it in many ways. Like first is just creating lots of support systems. So like from day one, when we started this business, we kind of created community in our app. Like we took a very community approach of scaling the business. So you have few success stories and you kind of introduce newer users more and more to them, incentivize those interactions and kind of keep growing that community. And when people find people like them becoming successful, they also get confidence that I can do it. And second, they're able to kind of get access to a lot of know-how of how do you become successful. Second was like our way of growing was very different than some of the other people before us. Like we did not rely on doing mass marketing, etc., because a lot of them knew about e-commerce. It's just they were not coming because of multiple other reasons. So we kind of created, again, support systems around referral. Instead of incentivizing people just to come and download the app, but incentivizing them to help people out until they get to a particular habit point, right? So taking some of these very different approaches, but the problem to solve was how do you make it very, very easy through a very simple interface for the next 100 million people to really become part of this economy. I would say the second big problem that we faced, and the complexity of that problem gets more and more as we scale, is India is a very, very heterogeneous country, right? So you go to, like the top 4 and 6 cities may behave in the same way, but as soon as you go deeper into the country, everything changes. Language changes, taste changes, culture changes, everything changes. So how do you, through a single product, cater to so many different, I would say, taste, expectation of experiences? And we have tried to solve it through like mostly technology. We have built over time much, much better models run by AI and machine learning. So how do people, when someone in Tamil Nadu opens the app, has a fundamentally different experience on the app in terms of language, the kind of products they see, the kind of onboarding experience we have, as compared to someone who opens the app in Delhi. And we are trying to kind of personalize this more and more and more and more because there's no other way. Like you can't have a different product for every city or state because people behave very differently. So I would say these are like, there are lots of different challenges as well, but I would say these are like a couple of very different ones, especially things that people before us hadn't faced in India.
So I know that once you onboard these users, getting them to get familiar with your platform, and that has been a challenge. So did you have to have the app also be kind of a self-learning tutor, and so did you have to incorporate a lot of learning components into the app itself in this case?
So we did. I think one of the things, and a lot of people know us because of that also, was on day one, we said, let's try to minimize the cognitive overload some of these consumers have. So we started with an experience most of them were comfortable with, which was WhatsApp. So for a very long time, in our early few years, we asked our users to use WhatsApp to interface with us. And even when we moved them to a website or an app, we kept the experience very, very close to WhatsApp because we knew one data point. Like a lot of them have their phones and they use like 1 or 2 apps. One of them is always WhatsApp. So we said, why don't we rely on this learning that somehow has happened already? And we kept the experience very, very, very close
Similar
to
WhatsApp.
Yeah. So don't involve a lot of searching. Don't involve them to use like 100 things, like multiple call to actions, go to this tray, go to that tray. Just create an experience that looks very familiar and consistent with other apps they use. And second thing that we did was, we just kept this app, again, extremely simple in all forms. So you come to the app, before us in e-commerce, the standard way of transacting used to be via search. Like everyone is supposed to search and get to what they want. Like it was somehow a standard. We said these guys, like they have never searched offline. Like this is the thing that they've done. They've never searched before. And trying to again create a new way of interaction is going to be extremely tough. So we did not have search for a very long time, which is very counterintuitive for an e-commerce app, but we said we're just going to run this purely by recommendations. We will try to figure out what they want and we'll push it in front of them. And then you'll see what will happen.
Yeah, I think this is we're seeing this trend across education, going to the next 100 million, or what about 1 million children. That WhatsAppification seems to be the lowest friction of how to get everybody really very familiar and very quickly on. And same with Agri. The next generation of farmers are very easily getting agronomy support and being able to action those once it's on WhatsApp. Thank you, Vivek. I know I'll come to the Indic language work that you're doing later, but just your work on Aadhaar, making that such a scalable world-class product, which 1.3 billion people use today. Maybe some learnings on, I know people may have heard quite a bit before, but maybe just some top-of-mind lessons while we are trying to build, because a lot of these systems that we'll build in some way where we're trying to connect the rest of India will take a lot of learnings from the Aadhaar experiment or now the Aadhaar system.
Okay, so I think that, I think the big thing that when you look at a system which is built for this scale, I think the most important thing is you've got to be able to define the interfaces, and you've got to be able to have a very specific purpose. You should not have, purpose creep as to what the intent of an identity system is supposed to be. And it should be built, and I think this is something that we've learned over the years, that, when you build these kind of public digital goods, you have to actually have kind of a layered kind of an architecture, in the sense that where you are trying to see that you actually create these simple points of interface where others can use it. Because in the end, a system like Aadhaar is a lot of things, but a system like Aadhaar is actually a system to be used by other systems. And that understanding and that focus to actually how do we make that happen, and how do we get as many people to use it as possible. And we faced, I think that in the beginning, it was something that, obviously no one else in the world had done. And it was not even clear that, how exactly to do it. But I think, while there is a lot of complexity, the intent is to actually hide that complexity from people who use the system, so that you can actually, and I think it is actually quite a technological marvel that 1.3 billion people are enrolled into this system, and it's something that I think just from a technology perspective is something that we can be proud of. But of course, I think the challenges lie as to how to use it. I mean, and I think partly, partly because of some of the things with the Supreme Court and stuff like that. And how do we actually use it in a more effective way as compared to what we've been using are actually some of the challenges and use it where it is necessary. I mean, you don't, and I think that, we suffer both from the perspective of sometimes using it where maybe it shouldn't be used, and other cases of where we actually kind of, where it could be highly effective, but it's prevented for some reason from being used in that perspective.
No, I think the architectural elegance is very visible. And today for anybody who is then later using it, the way it has been packaged and the way it has been made accessible is really a great example for any scalable system. And I know that the health stack and there are other stacks trying to do it. But I'm sure these are there are lessons.
I think lots of learnings from there, and I think that all of these stacks are actually built, whether it is UPI or there are lots of alumni of Aadhaar who are actually involved in at least some of the design thinking on these stacks, and many of the learnings that we've had. And I think it's very important to understand, and I think now is that it is an ecosystem play. It is not the government alone that can do these things, and we have to create these, these foundational things that then the ecosystem will innovate upon. And I think if you look at every one of the future platforms that have come out of this thinking, this concept of from day one thinking of the ecosystem and not saying that you will do everything yourself, you will actually do certain core things and let the ecosystem build on top of it.
Thank you. Prasanna, one of the visions of Digital India has been, how do you provide digital infrastructure as a utility in our rural areas? And of course, today, we are not there. I think maybe COVID was the one that really exposed that digital divide that is there between urban and rural India. So one of the ambitious projects of the government here, and which you're part of, is to make sure that every Gram Panchayat has such a utility. So the Gram Panchayat Digital Inclusion Project is one that you're involved with, along with Dell and the RDPR and the Education Department and the ITBT. So some little bit of color on that, and how will that solve this vision of, or actuate this vision of being available as a utility asset in each village in our country?
Sure. So so I'll just step back a little bit from technology and then go back to the rural India. I mean, just so we all imagine where we are and what we are looking at actually. So we were a very school-centric organization for the last 19 years. We've been working with schools, mainly rural government schools, but with schools as a center point. Now the pandemic came and all the schools got shut down. And we had a lot of printed materials that we reach out to children with. And we had no idea how to get it out to the children. I'm talking across the states. We have 18 lakh students in just primary alone that we had books ready to go. So one way was, our team started taking them on their motorcycles and take it out. And during the pandemic, I'm sure you've heard, a lot of villages started barricading, and they were not allowing any outsiders also to enter. And this is where we saw the power of, the panchayat, because panchayat members stepped up. They met our team outside the barricade, and then took these things, distributed to the kids. And of course, it was not just giving it away. We had a 2-month follow-up visit, surveys to be done on how the kids are using. All of this we could, in the first year of the pandemic, we were able to get it done through the panchayat members. So we saw that the youth who belong to those Gram Panchayats are willing to put in that effort. So that was something that we saw, a very promising thing. And the other thing that we saw was the Rural and Development Panchayat Raj, RDPR, had started this library rejuvenation work in 2019, just before the pandemic had started. And thousands of libraries across the state were in a better shape than it was before. And suddenly we started seeing kids landing in those libraries. So that was the hub where a lot of these kids started getting together and started using the books which probably they had never done before and started reading there. So that became like a learning center outside the school because schools were still closed, right? And then the learning shifted online, including the government system moved everything online. And that is where we had a lot of issues because we know that the connectivity is not there. The government's own data shows that 85% of the kids were not able to have access to smartphones during daytime when the school was running. So we had to do something about that. And that is where we thought these solutions we cannot solve by trying to get a digital device to each child. That is next to impossible. And we don't want to do it also at that early age. So one way we thought was, why not digitize these libraries themselves? So we came up with a plan of putting digital devices in these libraries. So we tried various things, tabs, Chromebooks, mobile devices, and all of these things, along with an Android TV and all that. Finally, I think we have figured out the best way to scale this. In terms of serviceability and a lot of other issues we have to take care of when we are deploying these devices out there, because there is nobody else who is going to go there for the next few months at least in terms of taking care of them. So it has to be taken care of by the panchayats themselves. So a mobile device with a larger screen that we can get, a mobile phone, is the best option we found out. So there are like 4 to 8 or whatever, depending on the panchayat size, we bump it up. And based on the usage, we can also increase those. And there is an Android TV that comes with it. That's for group learnings and all of these things that we wanted to use. And of course, all this will be through a Google parental control. So we know that access is also something that, So this way, we found a way to kind of solve this access issue, because as soon as we started putting this, the traffic in the libraries shot up. Kids started, not just government schools, even low-cost private school kids from the villages, even they had no access. So they started coming and using it. And the panchayat members started opening the libraries much, much longer, Sundays, Saturdays, every day. So kind of became a very good way. I think, in terms of sharing of the devices, as a digital devices for the sake of environment, at least, I think we need to be very strong on that so we don't create a huge mess later on. And also for these, because when we limit the usage to a certain level, like they come in, show in a library card and borrow it for an hour and they go back. Now, since they get it only for that short duration, they are much better prepared. They know that this is all I get for this next 3 days maybe. So they come prepared. What do I search? What do I read? What do I note down in my book? And what do I go back with? So it's kind of forcing them to be much more structured, which I think is going to help them in their any other learning process also. So all in all, I think this is one of the good ways we feel. And based on this, actually, like you said, Dell saw the potential in their global digital inclusion plan. And as part of that, we were able to get 400 gram panchayats right now, which is all connected with the internet and all these devices. And it's already, we are seeing success stories, coming in through various forums and all that.
Thank you, Prasanna. Ma'am, the government of Karnataka has done enough for the Bangalore ecosystem and has been a great partner. Now the vision is to take this beyond Bengaluru. So, and it's great that you've tried to coin a new term other than Tier 2 and Tier 3. So this whole idea of beyond the urban city rather than calling them second-class Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. So I think that in itself was an innovation by the government, this Beyond Bengaluru project. So what are some of the ways in which you're trying to make entrepreneurship and some of these other digital assets become more inclusive and lead to more equitable growth in places beyond Bengaluru? And Elevate has been a big pillar in that. So maybe you can talk about that and other initiatives.
As you rightly said, Prashanth sir, of late you've been hearing narratives that a lot of government representatives we are mentioning as it's just not Bangalore anymore. And we've been trying to showcase this for quite a while, I must say, but met with little success. Thanks to COVID, probably now the industry is also believing that there is an ecosystem beyond Bengaluru. So, right time at the right place, we were modeling our, coming out with the new IT policy. And then we realized government also is a quick learner. So we realized that we had to create a brand. So no better thing to use the word Bengaluru and create a brand. So we called it Beyond Bengaluru. So at least now, globally Bangalore is known. At least when you hear the word Bangalore, people will look up to see, okay, what's happening. So that's how Beyond Bengaluru came. And rightly, we felt that the tech ecosystem is spread across the state because in COVID, we found that 37% of the employees, IT employees who worked in Bengaluru are from cities outside Bangalore. So that is an ecosystem that we wanted to leverage. That is a part 2 of it. But even before that, policy initiatives of Karnataka has always been forthcoming, and we've been first off the block from the time of IT policy. And in 2015, we came out with startup policy. Probably the word startup was not heard of at that time. So that's how we started coming out with one of our schemes called Elevate, which is basically giving grant to bootstrap startup up to 50 lakh, which is again unheard of in those days. So we promote 100 startups annually through this program and across sectors. It is sector agnostic. And as we go along, as an anecdote, I would like to mention that this year, 2021, Elevate, we've had the highest number of applications, about 1,500 of them, which has again become a problem of plenty. But a good thing is that we've seen that whatever systems that we've put in place is evolving. So in startup policy, we try to bring out the structure. We realized that Bangalore anyway organically will grow. So we thought that we needed to create incubation spaces. So we started the New Age Incubation Network in emerging cluster institutions. Then we did for the research, the Technology Business Incubator, and then the Center of Excellence. That's how we've structured it. And definitely the academia has been very cooperative in participating in all this. And through our Elevate, we've been able to get very good venture fund people from academia, industry who participate in our Elevate. We have almost this year about 300 jury members. We don't repeat jury as much as possible, but yeah, at times we do. But keeping that in mind, so that is an ecosystem that we've grown. And I wouldn't call it rural entrepreneurship promotion alone, but we've had solutions that has helped rural entrepreneurs also. Like, for example, recently we've had a startup conclave for the self-help groups. I think Meesho also was one of the participants. Out of our database, we had 200 startups who are on the e-commerce platform. So SHGs are ready to onboard these 200 platforms. So in that way, directly or indirectly, we've been able to promote these rural entrepreneurs in that sense. But in terms of Elevate itself, in the innovative idea part of it, we've had almost 30% of the women who are participating, who are winners of Elevate, and 24% are from the emerging tech clusters. So horizontally as well as vertically, the government is looking to ensure that the ecosystem of startups spreads across Karnataka, because to reach a $1 trillion economy that we support, because 35% is supported from Karnataka, it cannot happen only with Bengaluru, and probably it can be doubled if we are able to tap into the ecosystem outside. So in terms of inclusion, yes, women startup exclusively we are working on. We have a separate call where we select women startup and accelerate. And we also have, of course, the academicians will not agree, but yes, horizontally also we have had startups for, especially to promote scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. Now this year in the Amrita, we're selecting 40 startups from the other backward classes, 15 startups from the minorities. And going forward in the current budget, because Kalyan Karnataka is an area that is still need to be tapped, so we are trying to work on it and see that a special focus is given to that area. So not only are we doing from the idea to POC, we've realized that our ecosystem as a state has matured. Now we are looking at acceleration and also providing grant money for startup funds, because we would still love people like Prashanth sir and others to work on startups beyond Bengaluru, but definitely a platform that we are providing, not only nationally, but even globally.
Thank you, ma'am. Vidit, for you to kind of scale now from 10 million to whatever 50 million rural consumer, I mean, in your case, rural sellers, what regulatory impediments have you faced, and what is going to further accelerate onboarding of those folks, both, regulatory law-wise and also from a standpoint of behavioral changes? I know, for example, is trust building still a big issue, and is that still impeding? And I know India, we're somehow inherently overtly jugaad, right? And that overtly jugaad kind of comes in the way sometimes of building trust in the right manner. So what have been some of the things holding you back now to go from 10 million to 50 million?
Yeah, and thank you so much for asking me this question, because it's very relevant. And I think if I just look at one of the big challenges we need to solve, I think one of them is policy related. And that challenge is, so some of the policies, especially around small businesses coming online, are dated, because obviously a lot has changed, policies take time. And one of the biggest one is, today a small business is only allowed to sell online, even a single product, when they are GST registered. About 10% of all small businesses in India are GST registered. So which essentially means that 90% of small businesses in some form are not allowed to sell online. And we see these anecdotes all the time. Like a lady who's knitting sweaters at home wants to go online and sell that sweater, she's not allowed to. So she needs to get this registration. If she does it, then the entire hassle of doing this filing every single month is a big, big problem. And in the offline world, by the way, the same thing doesn't exist. Like, you may not have a GST registration, and you can do business worth 40 lakhs every year, which is where most of the micro entrepreneurs lie, and that's fine. But the same thing is not allowed online. And by the way, in the last 2 years, when the pandemic hit, offline distribution for a lot of these small businesses were affected. They really wanted to come online, and they today cannot do it. Like we see on a platform, only 10 out of 100 people who come to register that I want to sell online are allowed to sell by a platform, because we say you don't have GST in the remaining cases. So I think just bringing this parity between this online and offline is a very simple way of unlocking 10x more small businesses in India to come online and become successful. And I think that's really required, and we would love to take help of Madam here and the government of how we can kind of make that happen sooner than later, because as I'm saying, because of the pandemic, a lot of these small businesses are not able to leverage digital platforms and become successful. So I would say on the policy front, this would be the biggest one. The second one, which is other things, including technology, what do we need to do? So I think trust is always there. And by the way, trust is also a very network effect kind of a thing. Like when you go in a community, you can find a critical mass of people doing something, suddenly you start to trust it a lot more than otherwise. So as scale happens, more and more people interface with this, I think we'll get there. The problems now, as I was talking about earlier, around personalization are even more intense. Affordability is again even more intense because you go into lower income strata. And today, I would say the e-commerce ecosystem is still fairly new.
Right.
So the cost of doing a delivery today may work, may be economically viable for a large city, may not be for a very, very small town. And I think everyone is I think the entire ecosystem is trying to innovate around solving these problems. So I feel that is a lot more about matter of time will get solved. But I am sure something around the regulatory front will help quite a lot in getting this.
Got it. Thank you, Vidit. Vijay, in terms of accessibility, to Bharat, right? So language and Indic languages has been a major bridge that we had to, or a major chasm that we have to cross. So what are you doing in that regard, and what are some of your works right now?
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. But I think as I think Vidit said, there is 100 million people maybe in the country, if that, maybe even less, who can actually transact in English. So therefore, if we have to actually bring the rest of the country into the digital world in the fullness of things, e-commerce is one aspect, but in the fullness of things, that basically that you have the ability to access all services, whether services provided by private entity or by the government, irrespective of which language you know, or even maybe just by voice, if you can actually just speak and you can access services. And that's where we need to go. And when we're saying connect the unconnected, we need to be at that place where everybody is able to access a service through voice, on their own device, and so to do that, I think the thing is that we know that a whole bunch of NLP and speech recognition and all these things are obviously available in English, and things are getting better and better and things like that. But we need, and there are many new things, right? Basically, there is named entity recognition, there is answering questions. There's a whole bunch of technologies that are available in English. But I think the goal should be that all Indian languages, and here when we're talking about is at least 22, maybe even beyond, needs to be English equivalent in these technologies. Right. And I think that core thing is very critical. Now, we know that obviously many of the big tech companies and things like that are doing very useful things in these areas, and that is something that we all applaud. But language is so fundamental. Language is how we communicate. We must have an alternative that actually works. That we must own our own languages, and I think that is really the core thing. And as part of this, in my association with ARTPARK Foundation, we are working with the National Language Mission, and we want to actually take this concept of building things for Indian languages as public digital goods that anybody can use. But that is in open source so that people can use. And of course, the quality of this has to be world class. Otherwise, why would you use it? And I think that to be able to achieve that, and I think that I think the technology exists today, and all the pieces exist today. And actually, that's really where the vision that we see, that these services will be available to people in all languages, and in a way that they can actually that we can experience those things. And I think that we are at the beginning of this journey. We're at the beginning of this journey, but I do see that if I want to get all the 1 billion people of India involved and being able to do fundamental things then these things need to be available in their own languages.
So Vivek, here you believe collaborations with folks like Meesho, Flipkart, and are you already seeding them? Are they already working?
We're already working with both startups and larger companies as well. And I think the intent is to build things in open source so that people can use it for whatever purpose that they might choose. And we want to basically make sure that we collect the diversity of the entire country.
Correct.
So we're collecting even voice from every district in the country. We want to kind of understand all the variations. And
just Kannada has like 4 or 5 different dialects.
Exactly. And that is really, but the interesting thing is that if we involve people in this entire thing, and some very interesting crowdsourcing initiatives are going to be announced and things like that, where we actually get people and school children being involved in these kinds of things. I think each person can help their own language reach the digital world, and that's really, if we achieve that, we would have done something
very exciting, Vivek. Prasanna, one of the other key pillars of Digital India is how do you empower people for literacy, and of course what Vivek is saying is a key aspect of it. What else are you doing as part of this digital inclusion initiative in Karnataka to help in other services, career counseling? What all is going to be part of this initiative?
Yeah, so language is the fundamental issue, and we are seeing a lot of that, there's a friction point. And the other thing is, not all the apps, are as user-friendly as WhatsApp is, and so there is an issue there. People do not understand what is it that they're doing when they're using an app on a device, so that's an issue that we are seeing as a huge challenge. And one of the So we started calling it as, digital literacy. So it's like a life skill now. No questions asked, just like how well other things. I mean, these are some things they need to know about the digital footprint, what are they, how to be safe and secure on these devices. So that is a huge focus area for us. So we are training mostly youth in these gram panchayats on safe navigation and be aware of all these things. Not only that, we are creating they are the champions within the gram panchayat. So their job is to take care of their parents or the elders in the community, because most of the e-services, even though it's all in Kannada, when they come to the simple thing, they forget to log out and just walk away from the device. So there's simple things like that, right? So even those things, I mean, who is going to educate all these millions of people? So the youth, I think, is again where we see a very strong potential, and they actually feel proud that each one, they have to teach at least 3, and they come and report on our app that we taught 3 of these people. So I think this is one way that we can spread this digital literacy on a real mission mode, because the way the digital world, I mean, it's expanding in the rural areas. It will be very sad if we let these people out in the wild without any, knowledge of what they are getting into. So I think that is a very key area that we are focusing on in Karnataka, at least.
Thanks, Prasanna. Ma'am, see, one of the ideas of ARTPARK and the government overall in the central is this creation of the smart clusters. And I know that we have these clusters beyond Bengaluru. But in these smart clusters, the idea is, can you have public services like 5G, telemedicine, drone-based technologies, all of them available in areas beyond urban India. So one of the asks from ARTPARK is that can the Karnataka government help in piloting some of these smart clusters and enable that, and can the IT department take the lead in? Because this requires working with the industries department, the health department, the telecom department. Telecom is, of course, within you. But so that will be a good enabling thing if you can support these pilot sites, maybe in Karnataka, which become these smart clusters.
So we've already put a system in place. We have the engineering R&D policy, which gives a scope for creating these kind of test beds. And this year budget, we have already announced a global design center in Belgavi. So the idea was to create these kind of experience centers and the test labs, in areas outside Bangalore. And like you mentioned, in terms of drone, already there has been a lot of ask to create some flying schools outside, and we are looking out for places and more than happy to have IISc pilot these kind of things. And so we've tried to demarcate clusters, the emerging clusters with certain specific areas. Like Mysore, we've trying to push the cybersecurity, because there's been already a lot of work that has happened with Israel, and His Highness Foundation is also working on it, and IISc has a center of excellence. We are looking at them anchoring and pushing Mysore in that front, as well as electronics as a cluster. And Bangalore will be the fintech hub, and Hubli will be the agri and edtech hub. So any kind of pilot studies in these areas under the purview of the policy, then it is quicker, because it is already in place and we can kickstart it. And we've also allowed innovation labs to be set up by the industry themselves. So if there are any pilot projects that they are ready to take off, we are ready to fund it, provided the proviso clause is only that our startups should be allowed to use it. At the end of the day, the overall ecosystem should benefit. That's how government is working with it. And we are in collaboration with industry, and Karnataka Digital Economy Mission is already set up to ensure that this industry, academia and government collaboration, that gap is bridged. And we would welcome anybody who would want to participate and be part of this growth story.
Yeah, so I think they could also partner with KDM, this Karnataka Digital Economy Mission. Thank you. So just almost out of time, maybe a couple questions from the audience. Anybody to the panel? Yeah.
Quick question. Haven't heard a lot about health soon after the pandemic. Love to hear how some of the platforms that you're building could be helpful there.
I think here, maybe, ma'am, you want to talk about some of the health-related initiatives that you are seeing?
I mean, health in terms of a department, I am not too aware, but yes, startups in the medtech is an area that we are really seeing a lot of surge. And we have a center of excellence with Manipal and Ramaya Institute who are working on medtech facilities. And we are also helping our startups who are in this field collaborate with Netherlands, collaborate with France, collaborate with Japan to take this beyond. And we also have our own Bangalore Bioinnovation Center. We also have a Center for Human Genetics, which are working on rare diseases. So these are the areas that we're working on health. As a department and a platform, that I'm not aware in terms of digital health, what kind of foray has been made. But I can only talk about this.
Yeah, one of the asks is, can we enable data for a lot of these startups, health data, anonymized of course, with the right privacy. So I think if we can, through our department, enable that and work with the BBMP or with the broader health department, that will be useful.
Yeah. I would like to inform that e-governance has already come out with its open data access policy. So probably one kind of a session on that line would probably be helpful.
Sure.
To clearly understand what is doable and what is not doable. Out of our IT policy, it is one of our action items to go for the open data access. And since they've already come out with the policy, we could organize that.
Okay, if we can organize that, that will be great. Thank you. We just one last question if you do have any. Yes.
Hello. Yeah, so Prasanna, the pedagogical approach normally, which has been, pedagogical success, it kind of is determined also by cultural aspects along with the language. So when you digitalize the education material, we may be missing out on what the teachers do in individual schools because they take care of the kids, they understand the kids a little better than what a person in Bengaluru designing that material would do. Is there an opportunity for, let's say, personalization of pedagogical approach for digital material?
Yeah, I mean, in that space, definitely I agree. For primary schools, especially, teacher is the most important element. So, and the reason we have this Android TVs in these Gram Panchayat libraries is because we want the teacher to come and lead a group learning session. I don't want the primary school kids to be using one-on-one devices. So that is mainly for high school kids and above, because where content is the king, and so that's digital serves well in that space, definitely. But primary, pre-primary, definitely teacher should be the center of the whole learning. And of course, they can benefit from digital content, but the driver should be the teacher. So we actually have an ambitious plan from the foundation to set up these things in schools also going forward, because definitely seeing this experience, we don't want the kids in a day-to-day learning to miss out on the digital inputs that they can get, but through a teacher. Yes.
I think we are out of time. Thank you. It's been an excellent panel. I think very, very enlightening and encouraging at the same time. I think this, provided we solve some of these things like what Vivek and Prasanna are saying, connecting the unconnected within the next decade or earlier, I think is possible. And we don't want, like Prasanna said, have the next generation of our youth go into the real world without being connected. Thank you.